Welcome in, everybody, to our final day of VCS week number 2. I'm Rebel Fox alongside Yoe. Yoe, how you doing this morning? Afternoon? Well, no, it's morning.
Yo,
It's morning.
it is morning. I just had a really nice cup of coffee with a salted caramel syrup, so now I'm feeling
Ooh,
energized.
there you go. That's a good thing. Sugar is always the best thing in the morning to kick off a fantastic day of VCS action. Because we're closing out our first or second week now. We've got a lot more clarity. Like Gam now sits at the top of the table in case anyone was curious what was going to happen. It's Gam as usual. And then we've got a bunch of contenders here for our second spots as we come into our final day where we've got Box Esports going up against Cerberus. That's going to be, I think, a little bit less of a matchup. And then we do get our Saigon Buffalo versus SPTCE Esports, which is a really, really fun matchup a little later on today as well. So let's just dive right into Box versus Cerberus, because I think both of us have very high anticipation that Cerberus should probably beat down Box Esports. Is that incorrect to say?
No, that is absolutely correct. I don't expect these games to be over super quickly because that's just the nature of both of these teams, right? Box actually being half decent in the early game, especially, and then Cerberus on the other side taking things a little bit more slowly, a little bit more methodically. So I feel like we're going to end up with 20 minutes of close back and forth gameplay, and then Box is going to forget how to do anything in the game, as we've seen them do over the 6 games they've played, unfortunately. I do expect this to be a rather easy 2-0 for Cerberus, and a decent start to our Sunday.
Yeah. Now, I actually we had talked about it just before we started on, and this is something that I wanted to talk about, which is that for like 4 straight splits in a row, we've had really good candidates for like rookie of the split. And right now, Box is our only team that has fielded an actual rookie. So I want to know from your perspective if anybody has stuck out to you as being like a front runner on this squad. Because obviously they're sitting in the basement, have not won even a game yet, let alone a series yet. But is there a player that's standing out to you at the moment as like, this is the person that maybe they can build their team around? This is the person that's likely to be our front runner to start the split off?
So I'm not 100% sure on the conditions of a rookie, but maybe it's a little bit cheating. But for me, it's certainly one player that stood out over the rest of everyone else on the squad, which is Tom Rio, and has played, I believe, 1 series for GAM. So I think 1 series still qualifies you as a rookie. If I think it's 7 games is the break point or something like that. 7, 11 games, something there. So he should be counted as a rookie, and I feel like Tom Rio has actually been very solid in all their games against Levi. He actually had some good early games. He is, for me, the player who stands out mechanically, but also in terms of game intelligence, if you want to call it that. So I feel like for me, it's certainly their jungler. Their solo laners have looked decent as well. I feel like Sunmer is just, yeah, he's there. He's not really a detriment to the team, which is something that you can't say about every player. So I feel like Sunmer is a solid second option. The mid laners are battling out the position, or battling for their position. So it's kind of hard to say which mid lane is better. Do you have a preference there?
From what I have seen, it seems like obviously Nogo has some experience that we are familiar with Nogo. We've seen Nogo in before. And Emu is playing like a brand new rookie player would expect to play in a league with a bunch of experienced mid laners. So the thing is, I didn't get a beat on whether or not I suspect that Emo is going to have any sort of verticality to their development, whether or not they're going to be able to become something better. So for now, I'm going to stick with Nogo just because I think Nogo is a little bit more experienced and has some of that veterancy for a roster that's just trying to find wins right now. And now, if we get halfway down the split, a little further down the split, and they're still winless, at some point, just give him a shot. Like you
Yep.
can't possibly do worse. I mean, Froggy also was down 60 CS and going 0-4 in laning phrases, and now he's one of the best mid laners inside the VCS, or at least has been previously. So sometimes you just got to take chances. You know what I'm saying?
But I've just gotten info, Rebel. I've just
Okay.
gotten the really interesting new information for today, because apparently, you're on the wrong side of the Drugtha fan club, because it seems like they're finally starting Ego. We've heard, it's not, I haven't heard 100% confirmation, but our voices from inside the community over in Vietnam have just told me that Ego is apparently going to start today. That is some exciting news. It's a little weird for me that they start him against Box, but then again, maybe it's just slowly reintegrating him into the team. Drugtha had some, well, performances on Rumble
Hey.
Jungle
Hold on,
yesterday.
let's call it what it is, all right? Card-carrying member, CEO of the Drakthar fan club, I am allowed to say that his performance was dog shit. It really was in their most recent series. In a series that they really, really needed to win, too. If they beat Gam and they jump off to an early lead, then Cerberus is feeling great. And so I am perfectly fine saying that that performance was worthy of saying, all right, Ego, we know how good you've been for us in the past seasons. Let's see if we can get him back in. Let's see if we can get him back up to snuff. And I, honestly, as much as I love Drakthar, I am happy to see that Ego is back at least a little bit. We all know that he had so many complications that caused problems and has been out of this roster for such a long time. I'm a little bit interested just to see whether or not, like, is he still the same caliber of player that he was when he left, which was probably a top 2 jungler in the entire region.
Yeah, we're going to talk about him more in-game, especially if he does interesting things, and he is listed on the roster. He is on stage right now. We are going to go into draft, if I can find my draft music. There it is. So here we go. It is Cerberus on the blue side, and MBE, MGN Box Esports. My god, their name is way too long.
Let's stick it with Box.
And Ego is in. Look at him. He's sitting on the stage. The legend in the jungle. He's one of the most elusive, one of the most interesting stories in the VCS. And while we glance over draft, I just want to say Ego is the promised new jungle king. He's the one to actually take things away from Levi. He won 2 splits, both against Levi in finals, and he's kind of the only jungler in the last, how many years? Probably 5-6 years.
Probably ever.
Yeah. That has really been able to get one over Levi. We thought Drakthar could be it. We thought Killer Queen could be it. We thought BJ would be there at some point. But in reality, it's really just Ego.
Yeah, it's nobody has ever found a position that... I think the thing that makes him different and the thing that has stood out is that all of these players have always met the level of playmaking that Ego has been able to have, but never to the consistency that Ego has had the ability to do it with. Because it's like, you will see games where Drakthar will absolutely go crazy. You'll see games where Killer Queen solo carries on some very, very unique champion. You'll see games where BJ is just running the map. But at no point are any of them doing it as consistently as what Ego has been doing in the past, not only on Cerberus, but also on Flash when they've taken splits and championships off of Gam, which has been exciting. So just touching through this draft to the best of our abilities now, we get our... To say what champion, if I were to ask you, if I were to ask anybody else on this broadcast, what champion would you want to see Ego on? Not one person would have given me an answer other than Lee Sin. This is the Ego champion, it's the VCS champion, and it's the only thing you could have ever thought that they would have put him on for his debut.
Don't give me slow Draven again, please. I've suffered enough. No.
Okay, his Xayah was legitimately good, and it's also good in Tavares. Where the hell is the Xayah? Why are we not playing Xayah?
So my reaction comes down to a lot of doubts about Slows. After his first 6 games, I thought he was the weakest link of this team, and especially his Draven left a lot to be desired. There's very uninspiring performances, a lot of getting caught out in the late game. I'm very critical on ADCs, and it's the strongest position in our league, and Slows is just not up there. He's just not up to par so far. Some of the other players on this team, as I said before, Tom Rio actually showing some promise. Even Emo and Sunma coming in and showing decent performances. Slows to me has been the bottleneck, or the anchor of the team, I guess. Just dragging them down, and especially in team fights. So let's hope he can show a little bit more today. It's still a new team. That's still only their 4th series ever in the VCS. So hopefully they can just get rid of these stage nerves, jitters, just gel a little bit better. And it can always happen with the Draven that you snowball out of control. So maybe that's the angle. But then again, you're playing against Artemis and Ronopi. And Artemis Ronopi looking at Varus Leona. Leona Ronopi, that is just the most classic champion for Ronopi of all time.
Yeah, also, just as a forewarning to anybody trying to become a VCS ADC as a rookie, when you have Uji and Ya, and also even Ariete sitting on the bench, like, you have to impress to some extent. Like, you can't come out and have the split that Slows has had so far, which is why we're probably going to be more hypercritical of them than anybody else, especially because ADCs also get inflated stats. So if somebody's looking at stat sheets and they're like, "Oh yeah, like Slows has got better like KDA and all this," no, like that's not how this works, right? Like they're better players working better in other positions.
Well, you
So
finally
we're
get
gonna
your
bully them a
wish.
little bit.
You get your wish. We finally see Pun on another Pun V9 champion, potentially.
Huge.
The Casanti is here, and so far Nagia Casanti was unbelievable. I had the pleasure of being having to play-by-play cast that one, and I just lost my mind. It was so fun. He went 4-0 in laning phase. He ran away with the games into Kiaya, of all people. So, yeah, I want to see another big Cassandra performance. But other than that, very standard drafting here from the side of Cerberus. A little bit low range, maybe, their composition as a whole. But a lot of playmaking coming in for their side.
Ooh. And we're going to round things out maybe with this. Notably, something that we hadn't actually mentioned yet is that it is Emo in as well. We were so focused on Ego that we missed the other EO champion that's our player that's going to be in the roster here for the side of Box Esports in place of No-Go, which is, again, of interest to me. I love experimenting. That is much more interesting. Given the range disparity like you're talking about, that is really cool.
I saw it in one of the post-games threads, so I haven't watched the game, but I believe one of the top LPL teams, maybe an LCK team, but I think the LPL team played this one, maybe Rookie? Or maybe EDG? Might have been EDG. Yeah, I think I saw this Lissandra crop up in one of the post-match threads, so it's not entirely unknown. Of course, gives you unbelievable engage power. Just look at this team composition. They just all want to go in at the same time from different angles and just destroy probably Artemis. So Artemis is once again looking at a rough game to play, but that's exactly what people like to draft into Cerberus, right? Everyone knows where their bread is buttered. It's Artemis, carry us in team fights, so it makes sense to just go hard and try to eliminate Artemis from that equation.
Yeah, there've actually been, it's popped up a few times now in LCK, not just in LCK, but also in LCK Challengers for the last couple of weeks. So, like, Lissandra is a champion that I've seen a handful of times when I'm passing in, like, amateur and college and stuff. And it surprises me just how much the champion is capable of doing when it, like, doesn't just stagnate, when you're not just, like, sitting there wave clearing against a LeBlanc, which is where the champion's been locked in jail for the last, like, 4 years. Is just a pure LeBlanc counter, right? Like when it's actually utilized for its strengths, it does do some pretty incredible things. So maybe this is what's necessary. Maybe Emo, I think for this squad is much more interesting than No-Go because the champions have already been brought out where like Talia, Annie, and now Lissandra are being brought. Like that's such much more interesting champion pool than anything we've seen from other mid laners so far. So like again, it's giving me OG Froggy vibes, not quite to the same extent,
True,
right?
yeah.
This is not Kane mid lane, but at least they're trying something new with one of their young players, giving them an opportunity to shine a little bit more.
And we have Rift. We just saw a glimpse of Lissandra walking down the lane. Cool skin there as well. The Ice Queen in the mid lane. Do we have anything interesting in terms of runes? It looks like pretty standard stuff. Lissandra going with the spellbook. So a little bit more versatility in terms of the different spells she can select later on. Will mean that she doesn't really have the immediate lane power, I guess, but as you said earlier, Lissandra is one of those champions that can just spam one spell on a 1 second cooldown and get away with it, so she shouldn't suffer too much in the early laning phase. Let's see how it goes later on. I feel like Lissandra has changed her identity quite a bit over the course of the years.
Oh, yeah.
She used to be very low DPS late game and just engage bot, but nowadays after especially her passive rework, especially after some of the changes to her AP ratios, her scaling in terms of damage is not actually that bad. Yes, she's still mostly just there for the initial 2-3 seconds of the fight, right? Getting that big initiation going, getting that big engage on one of the priority targets. But actually with the thralls dealing AoE damage and, as I said earlier, the AP damage being improved and some of the items also synergizing better now. Wow. Ignore that one. I think she's actually decently strong in the late game and can contribute quite a bit in terms of damage there as well.
Yeah, I've always been shocked because I always thought Lissandra Viego was a really good combination after the passive rework, because it's like when Viego gets the execute that you know they're going to be aiming for, then you can snowball it into like Lissandra passives that lead to thralls that lead to more executions, which is like exactly what you're trying to play for in the first place. So I always thought that was going to be a mean combination. Maybe somebody
What the?
Okay, that's Zodiac. with the absolute filthiest hook I've ever seen in my entire life that led to positively nothing because Ron OP played it properly by getting the aftershock right at the edge of that Q hitting. So somehow, not only did Zodiac hit the dirtiest play of all time.
Ooh, everyone is here. Ego with the first blood.
That's Ego, first blood, coming out here. Now Flight's chasing after Yato, East Tomrio. They're going to be able to get him, but that's going to be an Ego double kill to kick off our game. Yo, wait, welcome back, King of the Jungle.
Let's go. Ego is he's such an enigma. He's maybe the main character or the main antagonist of the league. We even had a trailer where Ego was the last boss sitting on that chair, and that's remarkable because everyone knows how famous Levi is, how beloved Levi is, 6-time champion of the league. Usually he's the center of all the trailers, so they actually made a trailer where it was not Levi but Ego. That just tells you how much of a prodigy this player is, how much of a talent and just a myth as well. He comes back first game. His old championship roster on Cerberus, these are the exact 5 players, and here he is, Flash Q, perfectly played. Tries to protect Yato with decent movement there to get in front of Tom Rio, but not quite able to do it. But that was a very impressive first impression from the side of Ego. He's back.
Yeah, it was really weird because so much of what we heard last year was like how much the Ego might have been a disruption to the team and, just tearing off the Band-Aid as fast as possible. And there was a lot of things that happened with Ego inside of like the game house that like he was around for the roster for some of the year and they just didn't play him, and Drakthar was in for such a long time. And it was really weird because when he was on stage, I almost expected a very different era of energy from Cerberus. But having seen all of their players, they looked happy. They looked like they were joking. They looked like they're like, it's almost like there was like this, it's almost like they just needed to give him a chance once again. Maybe time has like kind of mended the wounds. But if they're like enjoying themselves as much as they were on stage with Ego coming back, maybe it is a bit of a sigh of relief for these players, knowing that they've got somebody this talented to return. Because this is a different look roster. I don't know that any other jungler would be able to rock this with Cerberus. I don't know that Artemis would allow any other jungler to take this much prevalence with like the Rise and the Lee Sin. Usually you'd be wanting to play around this AD.
Good flash.
Wow. They're just bullying Emo, man. Like, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah, that's good timing because, of course, he gets level 6 soon, and level 6 you can't dive him anymore with the ultimate available. But yeah, I want to talk about Ego a little bit more because this is so exciting, and especially from the perspective of Cerberus, right? Because Cerberus acquired Ego after he was already a champion of the league. He was champion in Flash, then didn't play Spring Split because Ego does weird things. He demanded more salary, they didn't pay him, so he went to a different team. And Ego and Cerberus was quite an interesting deal because Cerberus, as a team of 5 members, was already an established core, right? We had Artemis, Ron OP already, Hugh subbing in here and there. We had Pan and Yada, so all these players had been playing together in all of 2021 and even parts of 2020. Artemis emerging as one of the big carries of the whole, of the whole league, one of the best players of the league. But they missed that sense of engage, that X factor with their prior jungler, and they were never really able to get it together in players. And then Ego came in, and he was exactly that. He provided this team that had really good formulaic players, very good standard front-to-back team fighters, and Artemis and Pan and so on, with that X factor, with that engage sense, with that champion flexibility. And he's also a great team fighter. Back in Flash in 2020, he was the best team fighting jungler. That was actually the reason he was able to win against Levi and Gum. He was the better Trundle player. He was the better Lilia player. So this edition of Ego, at the first time of asking in Cerberus in 2021's winter, brought them over the line, made them that formidable team that not only had amazing team fighting and good laning, but also that crazy jungler that brought the X factor.
It gave them an angle that they had never been able to play for before,
Exactly.
which for Cerberus, it was always a team fighting avenue. And then when Ego showed up, all of a sudden they had an early game. Like they had an amazing early game, not even just an early game, one of the best in the entire league, because they could design a game plan around one of the most mechanically gifted junglers that existed inside the VCS, which was such a kind of a very, very big difference comparatively. Look at that Emo again. They're giving him the rookie treatment today. That's the 3rd time that we've seen Ego join up with Yato to just bully this poor Lissandra, not allowing anything to come through. Now Ron OP actually stuns up Zodiac on the bottom side. That damage from
Look who's
Artemis.
here.
And Ego's here. Level 6 as well. A good kick
flash too.
from onto slows, I think, is what you're looking for more than anything. Could jump in on a Zodiac as Yato here as well. It's going to be an execution immediately underneath the tower, who's got aggro. Radopi holds it just long enough to make sure that nobody's going to go down. Has 2 kills over to Lee Sin. Now Ego, does he want to jump back in? Right, once again, Tonrio presses the ultimate just to make sure that there's enough CC. He's just going to die too. And that's 3 kills under the bot tower, Yulwei. Welcome back, Ego. We missed him so much. I know there were a lot of reasons he was gone, but man, I could. This is not the same VCS without this guy.
And this is not the same Cerberus. Okay, let's first take a look at this play. It all started with mid control into Emo. Emo had ultimate, but there's no real reason for him to use it. He's dead to rights. And then they set up the wave. They have the best bot lane, or used to have the best bot lane. Really good poke. We have Zodiac low. Now Zodiac can't defend against the dive, and they're dead. This is they're already dead on my screen. But Tomrio tries to salvage it, and Tomrio actually gets to level 6, but not soon enough. He gets to level 6 after his bot lane is already dead. After this minion dies, I believe. So yeah, now he's level 6, but that's just too late. If he was level 6 when his bot lane was attacked under tower, maybe he could have bought enough time, but it's just beautiful play, and Cerberus actually being so proactive. Look at them, here they go again, Emo. Okay. On the last frame.
Yeah, very, very big procs. Emo was able to actually throw that E at the exact right time to make sure to get away from Yato there. But yeah, this is rookies getting absolutely kicked around. There is nothing much to be said about it. That bottom lane dive, to me, also showed a lot of inexperience. There were a handful of times that I feel like there were better options than what was being decided by any player at any time. I think Zodiac actually misplayed pretty hard under the tower as well, trying to hook past the tower to grab the ADC rather than just grabbing the closest person. And now immediately onto slows. He's going to have to insta-cleanse, and it was a very well-timed cleanse right there. But he's going to have to dump the summoner spell just so that he does not die to Artemis. And now, Yato is here again. Leave them alone, you bullies. Cerberus, this is a good look at Cerberus. We missed this Cerberus, Yulwei.
Oh yeah, so proactive. Really not something you associate with Cerberus. This looks more like a Saigon Buffalo or Gum early game, right? Because usually Cerberus is the one to scale, just play solid lanes and defend in the early game, but no, they're not defending anything. They're the aggressors here. I have to praise Slows, though. I was very, very hard on him before, but that was really good mechanical play. Just dodging the ultimate to not get stunned, and then insta-cleanse, as he pointed out. Really good timing. He couldn't even see the animation of the cleanse because it was frame perfect, so gets away with his life. But then again, you once again picked Draven, Nautilus, and you're falling behind. He's already dead, so he lost the stacks already. That's not really on Slows, to be honest. That's more a team thing, but once again, it seems like the Draven plan has faltered.
I'm curious what the plan. Oh, wow, was you really, really good E. Oh, tragic. Okay, just barely not killing slows. He's going to dump the ultimate just to make sure that the wave doesn't crash and there's nothing else to be had right there. Red buff almost ticked down, so Ego would have picked up another kill right there. But think about like what we've been watching with this early game, where now you've got probably one of the most kind of aggressive early junglers making these insane plays. You throw that in with one of the better kind of scaling ADCs, one of the better scaling mid laners in the entire region with all the team fighting that they've got, and also one of the better scaling top laners. Think about like now you can blind pick tanks in the top lane, or you can counter pick with like Jax. And so they've got very few weaknesses on this roster. This is a really hard roster to break in terms of drafts. This is that bottom line play. And again, Slow showing some mechanical kind of prowess right there. One auto attack would have made a world of difference. I think one auto attack definitely kills for Ego and finds lethal on that.
Yeah, good E. Once again, Slow's actually able to find the one opportunity to counterplay. He interrupted Ego's follow-up Q, and that's why Slow's didn't die. Yeah, if you can see it here. So Ego doesn't have the Q, actually. That's why he tries to flash ultimate. But because the Q damage is missing, he barely misses that one. So it looked like a misplay from Ego was actually just really good play from Slows. He uses stand aside to, or whatever it's called, the E, to push him away out of his E animation.
I think that's. I think stand aside is right. I think you nailed
so, right?
It there.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, not that up to date with the ability names, but it should be the correct one. It's the one where he pushes people to the side. So even if it's not called stand aside, it is by definition a stand aside. But if we go back to the discussion of the team of Cerberus, this is exactly why they were able to win a title, even though you called it the Mickey Mouse split, and there's some credence to that, right? Some teams just didn't perform as well. The finals was a very close affair. It was Cerberus against Gum, and Gum did not want to lose that title. They fought tooth and nail. They went to 5 games, but honestly, from the get-go, and that series on that day, I was always thinking, okay, Cerberus is going to win today. Yes, Gam was able to get 2 wins, and mostly through better skirmishing, through better early games. But whenever it went into the late game stage, they just couldn't win teamfights. It was just Cerberus dominating with solid teamfight compositions, and Ego being able to match Levi, even outperform Levi, as one of the only junglers ever in the VCS to do so.
It's like I said, they were writing a story that we were wanting for Cerberus for such a long time after Cerberus had that like undefeated start to the split back in like 2019, I think it was, or 2020. I think it was 2019 that they had like this insane start to the split where we had such high expectations because Gam had fallen not off a cliff necessarily, but they were sitting in like 2nd, 3rd place before the second half of the split, and it was a collapse from Cerberus, and we were like, okay, they ended up getting 3rd, 4th, and probably were the 4th best team in that playoff bracket. As now an engagement into the mid lane, Rano P had the aftershock again. They dumped a lot into him right there. Now Yada has a bunch of damage. Ego jumps in just to try to be a frontliner here for the rest of the team. As Yada now going to get caught up a little bit. That's a big kind of change of corruption coming through from Artemis, who's going to try to clean on the backside of this fight. He just doesn't have quite enough damage, as that's going to be Rano P finding Zodiac.
Yo, what?
How do we get more auto attacks? No. Artemis and Yada are both insanely low, as this is a 1-for-1 so far, but everybody's backing out of the mid lane.
Okay, they're having fun. They're starting to have fun with this game. That was not the play from Ego. The first time he has looked a little bit scrambled maybe in his decision making, but still. Oh, we actually saw some solo kill in top lane.
We're really interested in the top side. That is Tomrio, who's kind of going at it with Yado right now, looking for something. Oh, Yado! In the play. Oh, Artemis, he's right there. Artemis, he's right there. Artemis.
Oh, Artemis.
He's right there, Artemis. You can see him. He literally
Yada wants him.
No, please. No, Yada. Okay. All right, we're done gooning now. No more, please.
Speaking of Mickey Mouse split, it's a little bit of a Mickey Mouse game now.
Truly. Just a little back and forth between it. Everybody lost their minds for a second. We went back to OG VCS type action there for just a hot minute, but we're back into normal stuff. And I didn't get a chance to talk about it because we were focused on the picture-in-picture, trying to make sure that Tom Rio was not going to go down or was going to lose the play. But how about Pun V9 getting a solo kill against Sumner here in the top lane? How about that? We were talking about it. You were talking about it before the game had started. This was another big factor for that like big split that they had won, was that Pun had access to like Tom Kench and also had access to like Dr. Mundo and a bunch of these champions that just kind of run at people and stat check them more than anything else. And again, there are decent tanks right now that actually do exactly the same thing. Cassante is a very skill-intensive tank that can do very, very similar things to those champions with the amount of damage that he's got. So it feels like a perfect meta for this team as well.
Yeah, this is once again Renekton looking completely out of place and very, very much useless. I just checked the stats so far, 10 games.
30% win rate, right?
Yeah, 30% win rate, and there's another loss coming in.
That is Zodiac dead. That is Emo, who's going to get stuck up and not going to be able to take second half of the E. That ultimate's not going to do much for you, bud. Get a flash after. Okay, now back to the bench with you. I'm sorry, that was criminal right there.
Okay, calm down there.
You did. He not only was the ultimate wasted right there, but then the flash afterwards has to be either tilt or something else, because that was a little unreasonable. As everybody else on the side of Box Esports, I am obviously hyperbolic right now. I'm just gooning a team that is getting kind of wrecked right now by Cerberus as they're getting run through. It's an 8k gold advantage in only 15 minutes into the game.
It's a really solid setup, though, for Cerberus. I mean, to be honest, MBE should know that they are all there, and they send their support to face check, but it's actually really well done. Yeah, we ignore that one. I have to say, let's focus a little bit on MBE, because we have been singing Ego's praises and talking about Cerberus and reminiscence of the greats of old, but we have to spend a little bit of time on this rookie team as well, and I feel like we just saw the perfect example of the biggest flaw in their gameplay so far. Yes, their laning phase this game at least has looked rough as well. They've been outplayed in all positions, but usually they do a little bit better in the early game. But at 15 minutes, you can really just look at your watch and just time 15 minutes in an MBE game, because this has happened with 100% accuracy. So they always find a way to lose a big team fight around 15 minutes, sometimes it's 20 minutes. And it seems like this is their biggest weakness as a team, their coordination and how to approach certain choke points or objective setups. This time it was the topside river around vision and just also how to play together, walk together as a team is off and is much, much worse than all the other teams. We saw Flash being much more competitive, actually looking like a decent team, owing Team Secret, but MBE unfortunately is very far away from that kind of quality. So I really want to see improvement in the mid-game. Just sit down with the players and talk about mid-games, analyze the mid-games of the other VCS teams, look at other leagues, because you need to be better at these stages of the game to have any chance of winning a game. Even if you snowball the early game, if every single game ends up in a catastrophe in the mid-game, you will not win against these better teams.
What's astonishing to me is that, like, it seems like this team doesn't have a ridiculous amounts of coordination, which makes sense. I mean, they're rocking what is effectively 4 rookies, because like Zodiac and Tom Rio have kind of been around a little bit, and the others just haven't as much. Again, Nogo's kind of in the same boat. So I'm a little shocked that there's like not much. This is also a rookie organization, but Box has been in VCS B for quite some time as well. So I'm surprised that they don't have some sort of foundation that would allow them to have a little bit easier of a time kind of shifting into this mindset. So I wonder how much of it is like structure of like how much of the coach is assisting, how much is the organization assisting, and how much of it is, you know, they're rocking 3 complete rookies and 2 relatively young rookies, maybe 3 relatively young rookies, depending on whether Nogo decides to step back in or if they decide to put Nogo back in. But the youth is definitely showing pretty heavily. This has happened a couple of times. We've had teams like this before where like Flash, when they were running 5 players, it took them a minute to get online. There have been a couple of teams like that are just super young that end up being a little bit too green for their own good. And eventually they get to their wins. Eventually they get to like, they start looking good towards the end of the split because they started to figure things out, like you had said, by like going to the drawing board, figuring out mid games and things like that. So we'll see whether Box can kind of scale into the same avenue as all these other teams we've seen in the past.
Yeah, there's one team that immediately comes to my mind in the VCS context, which is OPG. They used to actually be more than decent in the early game. I think they had more than 50% gold leads at 15 minutes. I think it was still at that point, but then had a 20% win rate or even less. So they threw every mid game, but I feel like this is a new kind of difference. I can't remember even in any of the leagues I'm watching, so mostly LEC and some Asian leagues, and then checking with LCS here and there, such a stark difference in level in one particular part of the game. Like we see teams be of very different level and mechanically and even in execution and objective setups when it comes to Baron setups and so on, where one team is clearly much better than the competition and one team is much worse. In NA right now, if you compare, maybe you would say worst macro is probably 100 Thieves and TL in the mid game, right? But it's not on an entirely different league. Like this is the most extreme difference I've seen a team have in ages.
Little action. Zodiac, he's trying to make plays happen. I guess that's the best we can come up with here, because I'm not sure what that was.
Ego.
Great kick to put slows right into Rano P. He has to cleanse to try to get out. Now Ego is going to be able to survive for a little longer. He's going to eventually go down as Yato goes over the wall trying to find slows. That's a big flank from Summoner trying to find something. He has to flash just to get on top of somebody, so he's not just completely wasted, as Yato's going to bring him down. A 2 for 3. Slows also driven completely out of the fight. So once again, Ego does not care. Ego's just I'll jump in. I don't mind. I'll take the death. I get some playmaking. Got a lot of jungle camps taken away from Box Esports now. We've risen to 11k gold now also as well. I hadn't even realized that during the discussion of this 20 minutes, it's been an 11k gold lead generated here for the side of Cerberus.
Yeah, once again, this is the exact example we were talking about, right? This mid-game coordination that's missing, okay? Cerberus is doing a great job in invading the enemy topside jungle to get so much vision there, as we see a little bit of a Baron set. And once again, Zodiac is approaching. Zodiac, no, run away.
Yeah, Zodiac. Not going to get caught in the picture-in-picture. Again, you can appreciate when somebody's able to make plays like this. I think also Cerberus had pulled out of the situation a little bit more, and Ego was just, he was really hyper to kind of get back in and try to make something happen. So Yep, he goes back in. Pun trying to bully some people as well. That's actually a really, really good blast cone, as I should be able to help set up force Zodiac out of the fight quite a difference. Pun is starting to take too much damage. He's going to jump into the pit. Yeah, I think they're just done here. You can see Artemis has bailed from it as well. A very quick call from the veteran player, just saying, okay, we don't need to do this. Everybody back. Let's go to Dragon. Let's make sure nothing else happens.
Taking it a little bit slower is probably a good approach here from Cerberus. They don't have to do any of these things, and you just pointed out 11k gold lead. They can really just do whatever they want, and it seems like they've loosened up a bit after a very tight early game, a very impressive early game. The mid game stages of this game have been rather loose and funny, I guess. A little bit of a happy game from Cerberus, but they're still in very firm control, so why not give the players a little bit more leniency, give them a little bit of time to express themselves on the Rift. I like to see that, especially with someone like Ego coming back into the team. He has always been this kind of stylish player. His name is appropriately chosen, right? He is a little bit of an ego player, so he likes to do these kind of style plays, these kind of over-aggressive, over-pushes into the enemy jungle. We know the Ego Herald back in the day, right? That's one of the coined phrases in the VCS English broadcast from Milky back in the day, so he's known for these kind of things, so I like to see it. It's a little foolish here and there, but why not? Have a little bit of fun. You're going to win against Box any day of the week anyway.
Yeah, I think one of the big things that I'm paying attention to here is that how much has Ego actually played with this roster? How much has Ego scrimmed with the roster?
Yep.
Because there's a very high chance that it has not been Ego scrimming for a decent amount of time. And if that is the case, you have to think that Ego is going to take a minute to kind of get re-ingratiated with, like, how do they set up team fights? How are they setting up objectives? And you can kind of sense that because Ego's wanting to fight to do it more often than not, rather than just like doing it some sort of systematic way, which is sort of the Ego way. But we want to see that kind of come together in one cohesive call. That's a massive realm warp on top of 4, and that's going to be 1 killed on the top side. I think Tomrio's just out. That's going to be Zodiac going down as well. Sumner on the backside as well.
That was
going to get brought down. Emo has no way to get into that fight. Tomrio does end up going down to an arrow from Artemis, as Pun had this big ultimate in the midst of all things. Slows the only damage dealer really remaining now, as they're just going to bully down this top inhibitor tower. And what are you
come
to do
on, don't give the emotes. Oh, Pun, no, come on.
We love Pun, man. We love Pun. He's had a game and a half too. He has kind of been at a side lane for such a long time. Finally got into a team fight right there and looked pretty good.
Just spamming them with the question mark ping, the new one, not the old question mark ping, but this time Senna and Lucian together, just questioning what the hell is happening on screen. Really nice setup there. Cool, engaged into the middle of everyone. And Zodiac just finds himself isolated on the side. Emo just look at Remo. He's Lysandra. Like let's just not play Lysandra in this game. I'll just walk back to base. It was a nice little excursion on the other side of the rift, but then he slowly just walks back into the base, and that's Baron for the side of Cerberus. Yeah, I think we've seen enough from this game. Cerberus can wrap it up now. I want to see another early game, because that was rather impressive.
Yeah, that I did like quite a bit. Again, to me, at least, right now, trying to reincorporate Ego, it really is, they're trying to focus on fighting to set things up. That's what they've got right now, which you could, I can look at this team and I can go, wow, Artemis does not feel comfortable doing this. Like, I'm just like, Artemis is not the type of player that's like, yeah, let's fight, let's coin flip. That's such a, like, an LPL thing to just be like, hey, let's coin flip a fight, and then that will set up our objective or something along that. Let's try to find a timer where we can push them out of their own jungle with a fight, find one pick onto somebody, and that is what's going to set up our Baron. That's going to set up our Dragon. And that's what Ego's been doing. And, like, Artemis has backed out of those situations so many times in this game that I'm like, okay, now I'm understanding a little bit that it's going to take a minute before we get full-fledged Cerberus. So as good as they looked at the beginning of the game, I think they still have a lot of growth to be had, which is a terrifying prospect for later in the split for any team that's not named Box Esports that might have to run headfirst into this squad.
And talking about Artemis, a little bit of an ego play for Artemis there. If you look at the enemy team's composition, as we have a little bit of an engage, this could be the final fight of the game.
Oh, get him, Pun. He's on the front line. Now you're delivering everybody into this line of champions. You got a couple of Zodiac. Look at that triple Q coming out from that Cassante. And that's got to end the game right there. Oh, Zodiac almost got kicked into slows. As that would have been a really filthy way to kind of finish off this game. As Pun is
No
still having
slows.
fun with his food, man. He's living on top of these enemies, dude. This is the Pun that I want to see, let alone the Ego I want to see. This is everybody on the side of Cerberus. This is the Ego version of Cerberus, and you can really appreciate it. Look at this man.
Wait, where are they?
Yeah. Have you seen Cerberus Esports this with this much swagger in the last 3 years? Like, this is insane to watch. Yo way.
That's exactly what I would call it. It's not clean, but it's so much swagger, it's so much bravado. This is not the Cerberus we know. They are usually such a disciplined, slow team, and yeah, they were a little bit slow in their mid-game. 15 to 25 minutes wasn't the cleanest, but they still never, ever looked like they could lose this game, and so much interesting stuff happening in this game. We almost exclusively talked about Cerberus, but honestly, Box, if you want us to talk about you, do something. Like, you haven't earned your right to be talked about at this stage, because that's 7 games, that's a 7-game losing streak. Wow, what a debut back into the game. We have the stats ready for you. I just need to pull them up on screen. As we can see here, we have 19 to 4 in kills, and of course, it's just a picture of dominance. Look at the gold graph. Very quickly went to something like 3-4k in the early game, then just continuous growth. Everyone dealing very similar damage. Once again, we see Cassante doing quote-unquote tank things.
Like I said, a game like this, it just shows so much more of what we've seen from Cerberus. I know over the last 2-3 splits that I've talked trash on Cerberus because I had such high expectations. I'm like, Yada is supposed to be one of the best. Artemis is supposed to literally be the best. I thought Pun was a lot better in a lot of circumstances. And they had these they had the weird Korean substitutes that they were playing with. They're playing with all these different kind of rosters and iterations. And they never hit what they hit when Ego was in the roster. And this is the first time capsule look we've had at this team where you can see Ego didn't even do the most damage. He's not playing Graves. He's not playing Kindred and slamming the enemy team altogether. He is setting everybody up for success. And you can see, like I said, I've not seen this team have that much fun in a game for 3 splits. And I want that to continue. As much as I love Drakthar and I am a card carrying member of the Drakthar fan club, I never want this version of Cerberus to go away again. This is all I want to see from them all split.
Yeah, former championship team. They just came off a loss, their first loss yesterday against GAM. Disappointing. They couldn't break through GAM. And now they have a different jungler again. Let's see what they do for game 2 as we head into a short little break. But I'm very excited to see yet another early game from this impressive and revitalized squad. 2021 Winter Champions are back on the Rift.
Welcome back, everybody. We are here with game number 2 between Box Esports and Cerberus Esports. We were super excited to see our Cerberus finally return, and now we get a chance to see another fantastic early game, another Ego early game. Box Esports, we'll get a chance to see whether they've got anything crafty up their sleeve to be able to kind of take back some of the early game presence that they were losing in that one. But what do you think, Yoe? You have any faith in that actually happening?
Don't pick Draven. Step number 1. Don't pick Nautilus, maybe, because we are donating a lot to that death fund of Nautilus. we are very generous the last few days, which is good to get this champion out of the meta, hopefully. But the Draven Nautilus just not it. I would just like to see Slows put on something that's not like the main focal point of the team, the main carry. Just play through your top lane, play through your jungle, give the jungle a carry setup, a Kindred, a Graves, whatever. Try the Tom Rio approach instead of going Slows over and over again and it's never working. So yeah, that would be my biggest hope for this team, because we have draft already on the screen. And this time it's Box on the blue side. They're banning away the Draven on blue against Artemis. What is going on?
Okay, I would pay to see an Artemis Draven game, because that would either be awesome or terrible, and there is no in between.
Both would be fun.
There's no way an Artemis Draven game would be like he wouldn't go like 1-0-7 with like a 13 CS advantage or something. He would either be at like 10-0 or 0-10 and no in between. As we're getting our first little jump up, I will note, Tom Rio did have an amazing performance on Lee Sin last year when he did make his debut on GAM. That was the game that was actually pretty good. The Hecarim game was not very good. So this is the champion that might be a little more comfortable for our jungler here.
Yes.
Oh, no way. Thank you. Okay, see, I'm the one that said that Ego was not the Graves or the Kindred player. Yet here they are trying to pick the Graves.
I mean, he's not really, that's true, yeah. But I want to see the Lilia, please. Ego, you were the best Lilia of the league of all time. Please give me my Lilia back. Oh no, it seems to be Viego. I don't think we've ever seen Ego Viego, because that's be after his days? I can't remember.
That's a great question, actually, because it's been a hot minute since he's been around, and Viego popped up really heavily, I think, just after he had started. So there is that. I seem to remember last year he played, I think, 2 games, and one of them was Viego. But it's certainly not a champion that he's acting like crazy in the wheelhouse. Maybe I could be wrong about that. I don't know. Nope, that's not true, because Viego is when Cerberus was experimenting with having a scaling team composition with Ego in it, which was not a very common thing. We always complain, but this was the champion that they would go to. So I think the last split that he had played was when Viego was first kind of introduced and inside the meta. So I am excited to get it back, because I don't know, are we on 13-4?
He actually has 11 games on Viego. He's 9-2 all time. So his stats are really impressive on this champion. He's at 81.8% win rate. So certainly one of his best champions, right ahead of his Trundle, who has a 90% win rate on. Most of his win rates are ridiculous, because he literally won 2 splits and then was never seen again.
So again, are we on 13-3 or 13-4 right now? I have to assume 13-3.
We should be 3, yeah.
Dang. Okay, so the crit changes haven't come through for Viego yet, which is unfortunate, because I want to see the crit Viego at some point, which is funny, but it just hasn't existed. But this has been like the OG pick against the Lee Sin. A lot of people have taken it because I think it's fine at dueling. It ends up out farming. You have to be really active on the Lee Sin in order to really make this early game work. Notably, also Slows and Zodiac go for Lucian Nami, which makes me a little terrified.
And
so
they
this could work. But
they also banned away 2 ADCs that are not Zeri. The obvious choice here is Zeri Lulu, right? But maybe Lulu can't come in because they already have Nautilus. And the read apparently was correct, because Artemis doesn't want to play a Zeri game here. Instead, it's Kalista, and Artemis Kalista sounds like a little bit of spice. I like to see it. The Kalista Nautilus is not the most interesting combination. I would really like to see a Kalista Annie at some point, but yeah, it should be a decent answer into the Lucian Army, and Lucian Army, we're seeing it on the stats right there. Not doing too hot in the VCS right now. 36% win rate for both champions, obviously, because they only play together. So let's see if Slows and Zodiac can improve that one. Spoiler, probably not.
All right, what do we got? You're now blinding top lane. You know that it's likely, oh, we're going to take the Jax away. Okay, so now you're going to play Jax into one of the premier Jax players in the league. Do you think that Pun has an answer? Because I know the answer to that, and the answer to that is yes. Of course, Pun has got an answer to this. He's the one that plays the champion. And that was an insta-lock. I love Pun. I just want that to be known by everybody else. I will now start the Pun fan club because it has been too long since this guy's got appreciation from just about anybody, and he deserves it because he's an absolute Chad. You saw him flash in the Mastery last game, and now he gets the hop, which is just a menace of a champion. What a composition this is.
Yeah, exactly.
Look at it. It's like they just want to bully. Like, this is a death ball composition.
This is the biggest anti-Cerberus composition I've ever seen. If you show me this composition, I would never guess Cerberus. Cerberus would probably be the last team I would guess from the VCS because it's so against their normal mode of play, their usual way they like to conduct their team compositions. Very clear by battle lines, very clear back and front, front to back, I should say. So this is the exact opposite. They might be having a little bit of fun, but it's also a spicy little draft. I like the Olaf in the top lane. For Pun, it's such a volatile champion. I always like to watch those champions that can go either way. So yeah, I'm here for it.
You're sitting here with like, you've got like Jax now into Olaf, which is not a good laning phase. You've got Kalista Nautilus into Lucian Nami. That is not a good laning phase. You've got Syndra. That is not a good laning phase. I do not like...
Syndra and Annie has this cool interaction, though. Someone told me about it. I can't remember who it was, but...
The W, where you throw the bear. And then
and the bear has extra effects for the W.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, I want to see that. So maybe that's the approach here.
That is the approach. So knowing that the Annie's going mid lane, it's not that I don't like the Syndra. The Syndra is just not the laner that she was before the rework. I do think that the champion is rather strong. I like it a lot more than it was prior to that. But the laning phase is a little bit worse. But this is a good matchup for it. So I will say that. I was going to build this up as potentially being the one time that Emo might have a really, really good laning phase. As we kick off game number 2 between Box Esports and Cerberus. Anything weird with the runes? Are you noticing anything crazy? It's not that I don't like Annie taking like Ludens and going for like first strike and stuff like that, but I really want Predator Annie. Predator Annie is so devastating. What's up?
I like the idea of that. Predator Annie sounds really fun to me.
That like before she got like the buffs recently, that was one of the most popular ways to play her because the trick was just like you go Rocket Belt with Predator and you just run at people, and that's all you did out of mid lane.
This could be dangerous. Ego's here.
What are we doing? Somewhere. Okay. Yeah, this is not it, Chief. This is not the play. And now he popped the ghost just so that he can continue auto-attacking away.
Oh, the Annie's here!
That's insane! The level 1 Annie! You have the stun readily available. The W came out. Punny's going to be incredibly low. He's going to heal. He's not quite going to get it, but they're going to get 2 kills for this. As Yato will pick up the second. They give up first blood, but Cerberus get 2.
I feel so unbelievably bad for Pun. This is so unfortunate for him, because he was ready to walk away. He did the right thing here as a top laner, just respecting the engage. Then he turned around, did everything to set up his team. Yato flashed in, and he still had to die at first blood. Doesn't get a single kill, spent his flash, his ghost, I should say, and is probably now teleporting back to lane. So he invested absolutely everything and walks away with no kill and getting killed first. I feel so bad for him, but of course it's still a good collapse for Cerberus, and Ego in game number 2 starts with a kill.
As does Yato, which is a great way to kind of kick things off. Again, the laning phase for the Annie can get kind of rough if the Syndra gets off the ground and gets some of the mana sustain, gets some of the first items.
This could be dangerous. Counter gank.
Exhaust immediately. That's going to be a dead Artemis and a really, really good first gank coming through from Tamrio, who had that kind of rough initial start. Rano P's going to go down as well. They hit the level 2 first. They did the right thing. But Tamrio, 1 camp into bottom lane. How do you think that that's ever going to show up? What a menace.
Yeah, this is just... I mean, the Observer was a little bit weird there. Ronopi, of course, flashed at them. He didn't run at them at Mach. Well, I don't know how much, but in the end, it's still a double kill for the side of Box, and finally a good start for their bot lane. After so many games where they try to focus bot lane, it seems to be their read that they have to give Slows a carry champion, a big presence on the map, and finally they get a good start into Artemis and Rono P, one of the most established, most long-standing lanes in the league, former champions. So that is certainly a promising sight for the side of MBE.
it is. Look at this. The range advantage kind of coming to light here for the Syndra over top of Annie. You can see Yato having lost a decent amount of health to kick off this laning phase. Also, there was a bit of poking for Pun there. I'm surprised Pun didn't try to take at least 1 or 2 camps because Tomrio hasn't been to the top side, and likely it might not even be expecting Ego to go to the other side of the map. I kind of wanted Pun to just sit there and go, I'll just take your Gromp and your Blue and probably top scuttle, and then you could have Wolves or something like that. And I would have been happy with that because he had more than a stacked enough wave to make that work against Summoner. But here they are, bottom side of the map. You're gonna hit a nasty hook around the wall. Gonna get CC'd up is Zodiac. Artemis in a really rough position.
Artemis
He's
is
gonna get
dead.
brought down as well. Can they trade for Zodiac? That is gonna be Ego attempting to make something happen. He's gonna be able to get that one.
No, don't turn into Nami.
What are we doing, man? Okay, maybe thought he could hit a bubble, hit a W, run through the minions, get away, but that was a strange decision.
That's just pure instinct, Rebel. That is when you play too much of Viego, and hey, I always want to turn into the enemies because, of course, I get my ult reset and so on. But before level 6, turning into Nami is not the play. You're stuck in Nami prison, quite literally stuck in the body of Nami. And this mermaid was not going anywhere. So Ego chasing down the kill. That's fine. I think he dies anyway, even if he stays Viego, he probably dies anyway, but it's certainly not the play to go into Nami form, and level 2 Nami is just gonna die. No opportunity for her to get away there. And this is one of the best starts, one of the most proactive starts that Box has shown us so far. Maybe Cerberus has actually overstepped their welcome with this draft. They went a little bit funny, and it's not working out for them in the early game.
Yeah, it's a matter of, I think Tomrio really got a beat on this game and saying, like, okay, you can attack bottom side, top lane's not going to be super easy to gank, not going to be super beneficial, we're going to leave Pun on an island, right? And then it's like Yato is already going to be in a rough enough situation that it's hard to set anything up without Flash. That, for Tomrio, he's trying to break a freeze for Summoner. I can appreciate that Ego is going to be here just to
wait a second.
They got so much damage on them, though. Can he get away from Counter-Strike?
Tomrio?
That's that's going to be a massive play for Tomrio, but now he gets Lee Sin. He got Jax. Never mind. I was like, okay, if he got Lee Sin, I think he's going to kill Summoner. Instead, it just was a 1-for-1 top laner for top laner. As the 2 junglers account for 6 kills in this game already away. That's an ultimate. Danny drops Tibbers on top of Emo. Let's see. Can we get it dragged far enough? Can the W come out? I think Emo had already dumped it earlier on the wave, so it's not going to be anything too crazy.
But look at how Tomrio is. I have to assume it's just calling, both of them calling for the aggression there, because that was really well played together. Top lane synergy between Summer and Tomrio actually looking like something, maybe even for the future for MBE. Play through top lane a little bit more. I wanted to see it earlier, and Tomrio with an amazing performance so far in the game. 3-1-3, 100% kill participation. This is the player I talked up at the start, and he's really looking impressive, in my opinion, even though the team is 0-7 in games. This is one of the better junglers in our league. He has been impressive almost every game, and giving him the opportunity to snowball the early game on this Lee Sin, first pick Lee Sin, by the way, is really working out for this team. I'm quite hyped now for his progression, even if they falter once again in the mid game, which is what we have to focus on, because that has been their weakest point of gameplay. This early game is more than promising.
Yeah, it's a position where Tomrio has done really, really good job kind of capping Ego's ability to impact the map very, very early, and has actually devastated 2 lanes. I said it, like Pun was crushing top lane, still is kind of crushing top lane with a 15 CS lead. That is a stun up on a Rano P. Tomrio wants to find him over top the wall, and he's going to be able to do so, although that was a great break on that Blacks plant there from Rano P to make sure that Tomrio couldn't follow. But Tomrio has just been responding to all the pressure. He set bot wave onto a really, really good kind of start where you have the Serrated Dirk ready for the Lucian Nami, so they really haven't been aggressed against in any capacity because it's difficult to actually make happen. Again, the Annie already is at a bit of a wave deficit against the Syndra, given the range advantage that she's at, and helped out the top lane as well. That's going to be the first engage into bottom side. It's not impacted by Tomrio, as Artemis is going to go, doesn't get hit by the bubble. Ego was kind of sprinting down towards bottom side, but it's not full engage yet.
Yeah, and you can see that the Nautilus from behind, even with Kalista alongside, is not going to win trades into Lucian army, especially if the Lucian is sitting on these many items and higher level than the enemy. Nautilus, after all those nerfs he got, even after he got a little bit of help from the most recent melee support patch, is just a pretty squishy champion. He's on a ward here. Tomrio could just execute him with Q, but he wants to go for the dragon.
Okay, interesting. We're playing back and forth, trying to find some sort of dragon. That's
What
going to be an
in
instant
the
kill on
world?
Lee Sin. And now we're in a terrible position. Ego gets to pick up all that freestanding gold that was existing for this Lee Sin. Tamrio suddenly becomes an enemy of the state here for Cerberus Esports. And that was a fumble for Box.
What did Tamrio just do? I praised him. That was the biggest caster curse I've done all week, and I've cast so many games. My god, what did Tamrio just do? He just walked into 4 people and died.
Yeah, it feels like they could have turned and focused on the fight super heavily. We'll get a chance to look at that in the replay. But yeah, look at this. Like, it's like, okay, he just jumps into multiple people. No support. Slows is not close enough to put out damage. Ending up getting hooked on the other side is Zodiac. Like, what? The intention is to play for the fight here. Like, he definitely not playing for the dragon. Like, what in the world?
Yeah, there was no coordination whatsoever. And once again, we see this problem with MBE. Their team fighting is just a mess from start to finish, even earlier than normally in the game. There was no coordination whatsoever, no clear calling. No one had any idea what the others wanted to do, and we have another engage in the top lane.
Sumner just gets run down this time by Pun, and at that...
Pun, come on, Pun, come on.
That's a Pun diff right there. There is nothing else to say about that one, as he just pops off right there, finally getting the support of Ego and not dying ahead of the rest of the play, as this is what they wanted from the Olaf lane. And it seems like in 2 minutes time, we went from a 1,000.5 gold lead here for Box Esports to now a Dragon, a 1,500 gold advantage for the side of Cerberus, and a Rift Herald now heading over.
Oh, Rebel, it hurts to watch so much. I wanted to see them be competitive, and now the game is just gonna be over in a few minutes. That's a good gank once again. It worked in the favor of MBE before, but now Pun is a little too tanky to burst him down, because all the earlier engagements in top lane were all about bursting Pun down as quickly as possible. And Olaf is actually kind of squishy in the early game, as we saw earlier. He doesn't really have that many great sustaining tools, because in the early game, getting sustain is not actually that valuable over just pure health, because you can't actually sustain if you die instantly if you get bursted. But now the Olaf is tanky enough to get to that stage where his Conqueror healing, his ultimate healing will come into play, and suddenly he stays half HP and just runs them over with way too much damage. Now Pun is ahead, got 2 kills there. Look at the jungle, Ego once again with an amazing game after some fumbles.
Okay. Yato looked like he almost outright killed Slows right there. Wasn't quite able to close out the kill before the reinforcements had come in, but Slows was in a pretty rough situation there for a moment. As now Cerberus kind of moving into bottom side, they've got the Callista ready to go. Ego is coming in as well. Rado P, what are we doing? Rado P, okay, yeah, all right.
Another donation. Another donation to the Nautilus Death Fund. Nice.
Truly.
Thank you very much.
The champion has the highest average deaths of any champion in this league for a reason.
That was the most Hillsong thing I've ever seen in the VCS. Very nice to see. A little bit of a shout out there to Matt's support.
Yeah, something like that. Okay, see, this is what I wanted to see from Pun. Pun is just now going to be able to cipher off camps from Tamrio with no punishment whatsoever. Because what are you supposed to do if you're Sumner? Walk into the jungle blindly into this Olaf? Is not going to happen. Why do we need to replay on this?
We definitely need to
just there for no reason. The only thing you could say is that Tamrio burnt Flash for that play for no reason also. Is like, he needed it to kick him in the right direction so that the bubble could land. But it feels like that was needless.
Yeah, the Flash kick looked a little bit like just an anti-tilt play, if you want to call it that. Yeah, just do something cool to untilt yourself, which, true. I mean, it wasn't necessary, but maybe it works. Maybe they actually untilt their jungler, who's, after having an amazing early game, had some questionable performances in bot side River and then also top lane Skirmish. But Tamrio still with a good game overall, I'd say. And we have another engaged Ego. Ego's
on
stuck.
Bottom side. Ultimate does land onto both. Now Ego's going to try to catch Slows here. He's going to be able to catch up the stun Q. Is going to land, so a couple extra auto attacks are going to come out as 4 members are here. Yato is around as well. They spot him coming in.
Rio's coming.
Oh, big ultimate coming through from Yato as they're going to catch Emo before he's able to actually accomplish anything. Ultimate gets stumped into
no!
one. And that is going to be brought up, be saved by Artemis as well as they break tower aggro. What a juggle underneath the bottom tower and a perfectly executed dive from Cerberus.
Once again, the beautiful bot dive, like in the game before, a little bit later this time, but this was dicey. They had to manage so many dangerous spells there. Perfect time on the Callista ultimate. Yeah, top lane died in the meantime, by the way.
Really, man? We're still showing this.
Yikes.
How did he... Oh, never mind.
Yeah, the biggest problem here, the biggest misplay by Box, and maybe just a good play from the side of Cerberus as well, is going to the top side of the tower, that's the word, on the top side of the tower and actually getting close to Yado. So Yado could actually stun 2 people on the other side, because what they had to do was try to camp behind the tower and force Yado to overextend into them. Maybe the dive would still have worked, but this was just a little too easy. They all walked towards Yado, and Yado just pressed one button and they all died. So a little bit of a misread from the side of Box, and now suddenly Cerberus up 12-7 in kills. This is one bloody game.
Yeah, the opening of the game looked okay. Again, I think Tom Rio had an amazing beat on what was going on with Ego's kind of mindset to get
not again.
Top lane again.
Not again.
Sumner, man, Pun is just farming this guy right now. This is, and there's what are you supposed to do if you're Tom Rio? Do you go top side and then ruin the entire bottom side of the map where you're already losing, or do you continue on the bottom side of the map where maybe you can salvage or try to prevent anything worse from happening? Because Tom Rio's just stuck between a rock and a hard place right now. All of his efforts from the beginning of the game just wasted to some extent, as there's nowhere for Box to play to.
And consider how many times he was on the top lane, all his efforts undone. And sure, Olaf is gonna win if the Olaf especially is a little bit of a better player than Jax in the CS department. But usually, I mean, we've seen this matchup internationally, and usually the Olaf doesn't get to a point where you can just insta-kill the Jax and just run him down and farm him for free. So we have to also point out that Summer is not having the greatest of games. Oh, Ronopi is somewhere. Ronopi is looking for something.
That is a really good play onto Slows. I completely drawn out of the fight. Now you just need a little bit of damage. Emo, will they be able to do anything? Ego is going to hang out here. Going to find Zodiac with a little bit of something. As Zodiac's completely out of mana. Slows also getting run down. Fun is going to try to get here. Nice pull coming in from, Ronopi. Ends up clutching the very tail end of that fight. Now, what are you supposed to do? If you're Emo, you're here with half health. You have to be super careful. Tom Rio is going to be here too. But are you really defending this? Are you even going to defend the second one? They might not push for it, but it feels like they had all the space in the world right there. Cerberus continues to dominate.
I mean, I know what I would do, looking at the timer. Right as they fell down in the mid lane, it was the clock hit 50 minutes. That would have been an instant FF from my side, because this is one tilting game for MBE, especially after that good early game performance. They are just fumbling these setups, and Slows, what are you doing over there? Why are you walking up to Annie? Everyone knows what Annie can do. And Slows, look at Slows. Oh, I think Slows just had a heart attack running into Pun. It's like, go away! And he still dies.
Very likely. Yeah, and then Ego was able to actually get kind of the soul and that little pull onto Zodiac as well, kind of close out the remainder of that play. As slowly over time, Cerberus are the ones whose pressure has continued to mount. We're actually in a position where like Slow's early game advantage has all but disappeared over top of Artemis. Mid lane, you're almost on full Rabadons as second item for Yato, which is an insane second buy.
I call that a chat build. Holy, what is that?
What is it? Yeah, that build is nuts. It's just Rod of Ages direct to Rabadons because Yato is not scrapped for cash by any standard at this point in the game. He's just going to one-shot Slows in all circumstances.
Don't do it, guys. Don't. No,
we have done this 100 times. Okay. What? You got to throw it the other way, Emo. You have to throw it out of range of the Annie to make it work. We're still here fighting Yato with 3 people, and they lost that fight, more or less.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, Yato could have actually played that much more aggressively. If he waited one more second, he could have gotten a triple stun and maybe eliminated one of the carries instead of ulting the Nami there. So, still some room for improvement on the Annie play, as Tom Rio has to evacuate. Because Ronopi, he's still a squishy boy, but he's also threatening with the CC, and with all the follow-up from his team, he can kind of do whatever he wants. This is one cool Nautilus game to play, because he basically entered for 15 minutes straight, just ran it down, died multiple times, but his team is so far ahead, he can just do it all over again, and no one cares.
Yeah, now that's kind of his whole shtick, is that he just hooks anybody he can, presses ultimate on somebody, and that's pretty much all he needs to do. As they're going to hunt down bottom tower now, Artemis just gets the free reign of having the Rift Herald alongside him. Shirley here to assist with a little bit of pushing power there. Also, Pun shifts into mid lane, which is really nice, because they're playing on 2 waves now. Makes it a little bit easier to try to push for even more. Pun is going to make sure that Slows stays respectful as well, because Slows' 1 axe could probably drop him to like 3/4 health, so you have to be super careful into Pun. Is there a win condition here for Box at all? Like, is somebody like going to be strong enough at some point to actually make something happen against Cerberus? I feel like Tom Rio has fallen off, hasn't been able to accomplish much. You think Slows is going to get to a point where Slows can maybe start killing people inside of fights as well?
can't see it. You play Lucian into Annie?
No.
That's always a hard thing to do. I mean, you can poke with ultimate, but Annie can also just press E and get a 50% damage reduction or something. So you can just shower in that ultimate and laugh at you. So yeah, I can't see it happening, especially also with this team already being quite weak in the mid and late game. Their best point is the early game. The early game, to be fair to them, actually looked pretty good this game. But if you just sit back and look at the gold lead, in the last 5 minutes, we went from minus 1,000 gold lead to plus 10k. This is one of the most extreme snowballs I've ever seen.
Okay. Really big ultimate, actually knocking up a handful of people. That was just some random abilities thrown in. Artemis was kind of like kept Rano P on the back foot. Rano P was able to go in, didn't actually commit summoner spells right there, so just a little bit of bullying going on. As Dragon is going to go over to Cerberus again, that's going to be their third one. And like you had said, it feels like it was such a very swift execution of this game coming out from Cerberus, where 5 minutes ago this game was a lot more competitive than it was right now, when it's now over a 10,000 gold advantage 18 minutes in the game. This might be the closing. Hun is on the back with 5 people sitting here. 1v5! He's absolutely going to do it. He finds one. He gets enough damage. He's going to run out the other side as well. And what are you going to do about it? He is going to go down to Summoner, or actually, I think it was the Syndra ultimate that ended up chasing him more than anything else. But there are 2 members now stuck on this side of the map. They're going to look for Emo. Emo doesn't have much. Going to get stunned up his ego. Can they chase? No, they're not going to chase even more, as 3 members are able to live on the side of Box Esports, which is actually a little surprising. Felt like they were almost dead to rights there for a minute, as Cerberus instead picks up in the mid lane to push down mid tower. Yeah,
Pan is having a little bit too much fun with this champion, but it's also good to see. He just ran into 5 people and actually killed someone. Yeah, playing against Olaf is a lot of fun, guys. It's especially if you don't have the tools to instantly kill him. Slows forced to flash away from his own tower. This is kind of a good picture to demonstrate the state of affairs in this game. Look at Pan.
Look at him, man. He actually went after Slows, then turned for Zodiac, which the only reason he ends up dying is because of the execute on Syndra. Actually, it was a little bit of tick damage at the very tail end from the Syndra that had popped out from Emo. I think it was Leandri's more than anything else. So getting outplayed by a single item. Ego also, I feel like if he had just cut up, then he wouldn't have actually got caught by that stun, and then he probably would have chased down Emo for an additional kill. Not that it actually matters, because once again, the gold did not shift in the slightest. Olaf is still insanely strong. I'm still waiting to see Yato absolutely pump somebody with his anti damage, because the Rabadons, just supplementing the Rabadons with an additional needlessly large. 2 more minutes and Rod of Ages is done. Like, Yato is going to goose somebody with this full
kit. How much AP does he have? What do you think? Something like 400?
Right now, yeah, probably closer to 500 at this point, because you have the extra needlessly, so you probably got like 2. No, it's probably closer to 400, something like that, because the needlessly will give you about 300 alongside the Rod and the Rabadons on its own. So yeah, it's probably closer to 400 right now.
Yeah, I want to see Yada flash in there, get the Tibbers, and insta-kill Slows. Or maybe Unami. That's a possibility too. As we have the Baron on the cards now, and yeah, Box is gonna try, but there's a big pun on the side. And Yado on the other side. Yado, let's go!
Oh my goodness, and it's an instant execute of the Lucian. What are you supposed to do about that circumstance? As Baron goes down, Summoner's gonna get chased as well. And everybody on the side of Box Esports that's alive, they're just running away. What are you supposed to do here? Like, there's very, very little for you to actually be able to accomplish. You cannot take a fight. You can't do anything else. Instead, they're just going to watch as minions walk up their mid lane, as they can't even walk into their own base directly to stop them in any capacity. Pun went up to topside to continue pushing up there as well. This is Cerberus on a masterclass game number 2 in a row, making sure that Box Esports knows their place in the VCS.
Yeah, they are unfortunately quite outclassed so far. In the 8 games we've seen, MBE has shown signs of life. Some of their players have shown some decent performances. This game, Tom Rio with a very good early game, and even Slows and Zodiac together in the bot lane looked quite competitive into Artemis Ronopi. So some positives to take away, but overall this team is just not on the same level. They can't compete. And especially once the game goes past 10 minutes and a little bit of the volatility is gone from the early ganks, this team's just continues to very quickly fall behind. And this game is the biggest demonstration of that, where in the span of 5 minutes, as we pointed out earlier, it went from 1k gold lead to minus 10k. And this is, once again, they're trying to approach the Baron, right? They know the Baron is almost down, so they're already late to the Baron. Yada manages to only hit 1 member, even though all 5 of them were clumped together, so actually quite a bad ultimate from Yada. But he eliminates the ADC instantly, so it doesn't matter. And at this point, Box So they tried to contest the Baron, but weren't decisive enough,
Mhm.
and then they still die. So it's the worst of both situations you could ever hope for. It's one of those classic, don't do anything until you're forced to do it, and then it's too late anyway, and you die anyway. So really,
Yeah.
some of those classic mistakes that we see lower level teams make, unfortunately.
It's also crazy. Everything about this play worked out so well for Cerberus because not only did they get a decent fight, not only did they get the Baron buff, not only did they push down mid and top inhibitor, they get a perfect setup for the Dragon so they can get Infernal Soul readily available. As Brown OP gets knocked away, he's diving into the base. Emo is going to get knocked up, is going to get brought down by Pun, who's just running at slows and running at Zodiac. On the opposite side, Tomrio trying to make something happen. Hooked in is, it's Summoner who's going to go down. Pun underneath the literal Nexus towers gets a triple kill. As Cerberus, outside of the Tom Rio 4 kills at the beginning of this game, they have looked infallible against the side of Box Esports as they are going to absolutely close this one out in a swift 2-0, 2 sub 25 minutes. I guess the Union reps might have swapped favorite targets this year as Cerberus making sure to hit their marks a little bit faster than what you'd normally see as they clean up this week insanely well.
Yeah, bouncing back from yesterday's unfortunate loss and heartbreaking loss for their side to GAM. And yeah, 3-1 start. Very good for the side of Cerberus. This, of course, was one win they were expecting to get. They played Ego for this one for the first time in a very long time. And what a stage return for Ego. I am not entirely sure what to read into this. He looked very competitive. He looked like a very good player. But we didn't ever expect anything else. It's more about the synergy with the team. And honestly, they showed some glimpses of potential synergy, especially between the solo laners and Ego, so I'm very excited to see what the next week will bring. Will they play more Ego? Will Druktha come back? Will they battle it out for the spot? Who can say?
That's a lot of stuff that I'm looking forward to when we get into our third week of play. I think, in honesty, and like across the board right now, we're looking for teams to kind of stand out because right now, outside of GAM Esports, who currently sits at number 1, and that's our expectation basically the majority of the time, you're looking at Wales, Cerberus, Team Secret, SBTCE, Saigon, and maybe even Team Flash competing for playoff spots right now, which is an unreasonable number of teams that are playing at a pretty high level or a high enough level that we could see them potentially taking one of those top 4 spots, comparative to everybody else. So this is a really awesome development because now, suddenly Cerberus is jumped to the top of our table of like, oh, how good is this team? Like, if Ego comes back in, is this going to be a team that is able to cement themselves as a top 4 team quickly inside of the league? Because being only 2 weeks in, we've only had like 4 games for any given organization, any given kind of situation. So that's something to pay attention to. Look at the damage dealt chart, man. Pun smirked this series also. Like, I know we didn't talk about it super crazy. Game 1 was a little bit boring. This game 2, he got that massive counter pick against one of his favorite champions. But Pun looked so much different in this one. I don't know if it was Ego's kind of difference on the map where like Ego's making such an impact that it is impossible to put any attention towards top lane. It just broke Pun completely loose and let him Pun V9 on the top side of the map. But if this is the impact that adding Ego back to the roster is going to have, that now all of a sudden you've unlocked Pun and Yato to be such harder carries that you don't necessarily need Artemis to be this like hyper carry for the team, like 1v9 monster. I'm all for it. Like, this is a Cerberus that I'm all down to watch for the remainder of the year.
Yeah, and I actually think that's a super important point you just made, because this is also one of the things that is different between the Championship Cerberus, the Ego Cerberus, and the older Cerberus, and also the Cerberus we reverted back to in 2022, which was, we all know Artemis is maybe even a world-class player. Okay, we haven't seen him against international competition, but he has looked like the best ADC over the course of the last few years here, and it's just not quite enough to only have one player who can carry. And this is one of the games that gives you so much hope for this team, because we all know Artemis in top form, Artemis is ceiling, is champion, is MVP of the league. But if you can incorporate Pun being a threat with counter picks and strong tank picks in the top lane, if you can put Yado back to comfortable positions and strong competitive mid lane games, and Ego as the playmaker to set up those 2 solo laners as well, then this team is quite formidable and a really scary opponent, because you don't even know where to attack. You all know Artemis is probably the carry in the late game, we need to be careful, but maybe the other players can step up enough that Artemis, the only focusing on Artemis will not be enough to get past them. And yeah, this is quite a promising side. And of course, take it with a grain of salt, because it is against Box Esports, and we right now expect everyone to beat Box rather easily. But still, only week 2, and we want to see some development in these teams, and this is getting me hyped for the split.
Let me put it like this. For waking up at 4:30 in the morning, 4 in the morning, I think I woke up at 4:15 this morning. That was when my alarm was set for. For waking up at 4:15 in the morning to cast Box Esports, Cerberus made this an awesome series. Cerberus made this a fun series to watch. Like, I could not have asked for a more enjoyable series than what I just got from Cerberus Esports. So I want to give them props because it's always really tough to wake up and to watch teams that end up playing really boring. And you know what? I could not have asked for a better team to play up against Box because they gave so much excitement with the Ego sub and with the way that all their players played. So if nothing else, they're entertaining to watch, and I'm looking forward to their continued plot line. Eventually, Box also, like Tom Rio has got some potential. I think Sumner got absolutely bullied and maybe cannot counterpick anymore. But outside of that, I think you were right to say that like Tom Rio Sumner might have been the core of this team in general. I still think Nogo should probably come back in. I don't think Emo has showed me anything of importance. I've seen a ton of players come in. Like, you remember Marcus subbing into the mid lane. You remember a couple of other mid lane subs that have come out for Flash over the last couple of splits. Like, all of them have had these moments where it's like, okay, they look pretty good. So far, Emo has not shown that to me. So I would be okay with them going back to no-go and then practicing that for the remainder of the split just to see if they can get anything cooking. But for now, we're going to be getting ready to step into series number 2. We got, probably half an hour or something like that. Keep your eye on the timer because we will be tracking that ourselves. And once we come back, we'll be here with Saigon Buffalo versus SBTC Esports, a really big matchup for both of these rosters heading into the final game of our week number 2. Stick around because we'll be right back.